This is going to be a very fun video. I'm going to be mixing up some questions, music and disability, and I'm also going to mix up theory and performance and other various topics ranging from easy modes, medium modes, and the more difficult modes of all sort of questions that may appear. So, let's see if I can really do this. Here's the 10-question practice style practice round focusing specifically on music and disability. I'll make these challenging and scenario based. A student with a visual impairment is learning a new instrument borrowed from a printed notation. Which strategy would best promote independent participation? Excuse the student from reading notation. Provide the music in an accessible form and teach appropriate tactile audio strategy. Have the student play the part while the student listening. Replace the instrument assignment with a written assignment. Okay, if I had a blind student, I would provide the music in a larger print so it makes it accessible for the student and teach appropriate tactile audio strategy. So I'm thinking it's going to be B. Okay, what's another question? A student with a hearing impairment participating in a middle school ensemble. Which approach is most appropriate? Remove the student from ensemble rehearsals. No, this is about exclusivity. I don't think this is gonna. So if it's a hearing impairment, B wouldn't be it because they can't hear. They have hard of hearing. How on earth they gonna hear anything? So B is definitely not it because you can't rely on verbal. C would have to be it because if a student has a hard of hearing or is deaf, but they can see well, try to provide the visual cues to do so. A student with a physical disability has difficulty manipulating standard keys on an instrument. What should the teacher do first? The teacher should determine what adaptations or alternative techniques could provide access to the instrument. That 3 would have to be B. Which statement best distinguishes an accommodation from a modification? Okay. A modification is the one thing that changes the students how they access instruction. An accommodation okay. So I have to say 4 is B. When a student with autism becomes overwhelmed by unintended changes during rehearsal, what is the most likely support successful participation? Frequently change the schedule routine to increase flexibility. Avoid giving students advanced information about performances. Establish predictable routines and provide advance notices of significant changes. Okay. For a student with autism, and I had this before when I was in school, establish predictable routines. That way it makes it easier to flow, and you know what, because most autistic, if you have a way that's consistent, you will be a lot more outcomes. You have a lot more outcomes for that. So I'm going to say when it does establish it, that's when you know. So other than it has to be established and provide advance notices of significant changes. C. A student with a learning disability has difficulty decoding complex notation, but demonstrates strong oral skills. What approach is the best? To require the student to master notation independently before hearing the music, I think that's going to be 6 is going to be A. Alright, so during ensemble rehearsal, a student with an intellectual disability struggles to follow a multi-step musical direction. What is the best response? Repeat the entire direction more loudly? No. Okay, so if they're struggling, if I was being in a classroom with a bunch of them, I would have to break it down into smaller, clearly sequenced steps. Because the smaller you break the directions, it makes them see more of the bigger picture. So this is going to be C. Which practice best reflects the universal design of learning, UDL, in a classroom? Not creating separate, okay, so giving provide, okay. Actually, number 8 would have to be B, because then again, for multiple universal, because every instruction is going to be different. Number 9, a student with ADHD frequently loses focus during a long ensemble rehearsal. What strategy would be most appropriate? Not removing them. I don't think that's the thing. ADHD kids still belong. Okay. And definitely not D, because they lose focus. Alright. I would say provide clear expectations, structured transitions, and opportunity for active engagement. This one, you want to make them active as you can, and you don't want to lose them, so that would be B. 10. A music teacher selecting repertoire for inclusive ensemble. What consideration is more important? Which consideration is most important? Selecting the repertoire minimizes participation by students with disabilities. Selecting only repertoire written specifically for students with disabilities. Considering accessibility while maintaining meaningful musical goals and opportunities for participation. Assigning different musical standards. Oh, I'm thinking 10 is going to be C. We'll see how it goes. 80%. Alright. Okay. Given how you handled the harder music theory score analysis questions, I can make the next disability round much harder. With tricky IEP, 504, UDL, assistive technology, adaptive instruments, scenario-based questions. Okay, medium-like questions. Medium questions. Okay, let's see if I can tackle these. Alright. A student with a visual impairment is learning a new song in a general music class. Which is most appropriate. How do students sit out while the class learns the song? Provide access material and use auditory instruction when it's appropriate. Give the student a different assignment. No. Require the student to memorize the song before participating? Number 1 is B. You provide it. A student with ADHD has difficulty remaining focused during a 30-minute music lesson. What strategy is best? Provide shorter activities with clearer transitions. Remove the student from the classroom. Require the student to remain seated throughout the lesson. Give the student additional written assignments. Okay, for the ADHD question, because they lose interest after a certain amount of time. So I will put 2 B and B. Give an example of which is an example of accommodation. Reducing the number of musical concepts and okay, A is not really it. A sounds like more like a modification versus an accommodation. Replacing an ensemble chorus with a non-musical chorus. No. Really recheck that one. That's still a modification. No. Providing a large notation for a student who needs it. Yes. It is. For visually impaired students, you have to do this. Lowering musical performances expectation. No, it's still a modification. I think we got a winner, and it's C. A student with a hearing impairment is participating in a music class. Which teacher behavior will best support the student? Speak while facing away from the student? No. Provide a visual cue and face the student when giving instruction? Yes. Avoid using demonstration? No. Exclude the student from listening activities? No. What was the answer? B. A student with autism has difficulties with unexpected changes in rehearsal. What is the best strategy? Change the routine frequently. No. Because some of the autistic kids don't adapt to changes that well, and it becomes overwhelming. The answer is I would provide notices of major changes well in advance. B. A student who had difficulty playing a standard instrument because of fine motor control. What should the teachers consider? Okay, so if they have fine motor problems, I would have to consider making an adaptation for the instrument that will make it easier to play. Which practice best represents music education? Inclusive musical education is when students with disabilities participate in meaningful and appropriate support. That would have to be B for number 7. A student has difficulty reading traditional notation but can accurately reproduce melodies after hearing them. Which strategy would be most effective? Has difficulty reading to have it. Okay, you can have the student working work exclusively for the written assignments, so you can work on this. Which technology could best assist a student who has a difficulty assessing traditional printed music? Accessible digital music reading system, metronome only, standard pencil, classical speaker note. I have to say for this one, number 9 is A. A teacher wants to make music assessments accessible for students with different learning needs while maintaining the same learning objective. What approach is the best? So make it accessible, giving them. So for this one, rather make a music assessment different. So I would have to say 10 is B, without a doubt. And I hope I got them all right. Okay, so not all of them. Oh. Now let's do some other weird questions. I'm gonna do hard questions on this level. Hard questions. Let's hit some hard questions, hard style questions. A student with a documental learning disability has an IEP requiring extended time and access to audio direction. During a music theory assessment, the teacher gives the student additional time but does not provide specific audio instruction. Which statement best describes the situation? Okay, documental learning disability requires time and access. The teacher should implement. Wait. Alright. Ooh. So, shoot. Okay, to get extended time. I would have to say audio directions will have to be a modification. So one is going to be D, I think. A student with a visual impairment is learning a complex rhythmic passage. The teacher provides an accessible notation format and allows the student to use audio recording of the passage. The musical objective remains unchanged. This describes as. Okay, so a student with a visual impairment learning a complex rhythmic passage. The teacher provides accessible notation format and allows the student to use the audio recording for the passage. The musical objective remains unchanged. This one says, I'm going to say number 2 is going to be sounding more like an accommodation versus a modification. Okay. A student with a physical disability can demonstrate accurate rhythm performance but cannot physically operate the standard instrument mechanism. Which teacher response is most appropriate? So what is appropriate for this one is going to be putting it at, you can repeat. Okay, so general music teacher is assigning a unit on musical form. Which approach best reflects universal design for learning? design multiple ways for students to access understanding from the beginning, so that one would be about 4. For 5. During ensemble rehearsal, a student with autism becomes distressed and the teacher unexpectedly changes the rehearsal sequence. Which intervention most appropriate as a preventative strategy? Provide predictable rehearsal schedule and communicate significant changes in advance. 5 is B. A student with a hearing impairment learns new rhythmic patterns or combinations of strategies of best support access to instruction. So hearing impairment will be visual, I think. So this is going to be number 7. A student with intellectual disability is working towards an ensemble performance objective. The teacher breaks down the musical task into smaller steps, models each step, and gradually reduces assistance as the student becomes more independent. This approach better so this one better replaces the fact that it is curriculum modification. So this is a student with a disability is capable of performing a musical answer at the same level as the musical complexity but needs additional time to learn it. Which teacher decision best maintain the appropriate? Okay, for this one, I would say for 8B. You provide a little more time to get the students to learn it. A teacher notices the students consistently struggle with traditional notation, but demonstrates a musical understanding with accessible digital notation program. What is the best conclusion? The technology may be functioning as an assistance tool that can improve access. So that's going to be number 9 is C. A student with a disability receives an adaptive part in an ensemble. The part is less technically demanding but still contributes to an essential musical layer to the ensemble texture. Which practice is most appropriate? Get into an unrelated activity. It turns adaptive parts of music. I think this one's going to be providing the fact that it's going to be B. I'm pretty sure. Okay, I'm going to move on to easy 5113 questions. Just to give it to a point, give it a challenge. Oh, here's some ones. So, let me read the question. How many shards are in D major? 2. B. Alright. Which period is associated with composers such as Haydn, Mozart, and early Beethoven? Mozart, early Beethoven. Ooh, Haydn, Mozart, early Beethoven. Classical, gotta be. So I have to say 2 is B. What's the relative minor of C major? Relative minor of C major. A minor. B. Which instrument belongs to the woodwind family? 4 is C. Clarinet. What does piano mean in music? Soft. That's C. Which graph commonly used for violin? Violin. I'm thinking. Not alto. Wait. Alto class used for viola. I think this is gonna be treble. Treble. I'm thinking. D. Who wrote the Four Seasons? Vivaldi. B. That is B. Vivaldi. In 4/4 meter, which note receives one beat? Quarter note. Give an example of accommodation for a student with a disability. Removing a student from music class. No. It's all about inclusivity. Providing accessible notation. Yes. Eliminating all musical adjectives. No. Giving a student no assessment. No. And I got a winner of B. Alright, so what is the term for gradually becoming louder? Gradually. I know that's an easy one. I will say for the pure shot of this monkey business is going to be C. Crescendo. Okay. Alright. Alright, so let's do just only the hot answer? Yeah, it's a has C. Wait. Oh, okay. Alright. Medium questions. Let's kick it out. Medium questions. Let's kick out some more. Which Roman numeral represents a minor tonic key and a major key? So, 1. In which key a G major, which is the 2 chord? A minor. So that one's going to be 2 is A. Which characteristics is most associated with the Baroque era? Baroque period. Whole tone scales, basso continuo, elaborate ornamentation, serialism. I think, okay. For number 3, Baroque is heavily ornamented, and Baroque period is going to be B. A melody that begins on scale degree 5 and ends on scale degree 1, which is most likely being the function of the final note. A melody begins on scale degree 5 and ends on 1. What is the function of the note? Tonic, dominant. The functioning from dominant to tonic, or is A. Which composer is associated with impressionism? Debussy. A student hears a melody in the second phrase and the first phrase at a higher pitch level. Which term describes the melodies? Is it more sequential? In a 6/8 meter, the 2 primary beats are divided into 2 groups of 3/8 notes. A student with a disability can demonstrate the same musical objective as classmates, but needs enlarged notation. Providing enlarged notation is an example of an accommodation. Which technology best allows teachers to record students' performances and give individualized Dow. This would be Dow. Looks like it's gonna be a Dow. Okay, so a score shows in the upper voices and the lower voice prominently use the contrary notion. What does contrary motion mean? When one remains stationary while the other one moves. That's what's happening. Okay. So what did I do wrong? How's it that nonsense? Oh. You can also finish ABA form. Ternary. Number 12. C to A, major 6. Isn't it? Both correct. Now the final score. Ooh, okay. Okay.